welcome back to Health Q&A Monday. My name is Gill Stannard. I'm a naturopath and health and happiness coach, and I'm here to answer your questions. Today I've got a question from Ellen in Brisbane, and she wants to know what I think of food allergy testing. This is another huge question, and what I'm going to share with you today are my personal thoughts, and I can't speak for the whole industry. So when I'm working with a client who appears to have allergic type symptoms, they may be breaking out into a rash, but a lot of allergy symptoms are a lot more diffuse. Maybe general feeling of unwellness, might be noticing they've got palpitations, that their heart's beating faster, that a chronic condition, say arthritis or pain, is flaring up when they eat certain foods. When a client comes and presents with those, what I like to do first before considering any testing options is to make a food symptom diary. That means you write down everything you eat and everything you drink, and also put in the same timeline what your symptoms are. And also too, if you suspect that stress may be a trigger for your allergies, or in this case a food intolerance can certainly be triggered by stress, then to put in any stressful things that are going on, whether you've had an argument, whether you're under pressure at work at that particular time, whether you're in an uncomfortable social situation. I'll then look at what's going on in that time frame, because often my clients look at it and say, I can't make sense of this. So I'll look at it and see if there's any clear connections. For some people, it's really, really simple. They eat a food, in the next 10 to 20 minutes, they might get a swollen, uncomfortable belly. They may feel discomfort in their gut, and that's always a clear giveaway. But for others, it can be a lot more diffuse, and you may even have those symptoms 24 hours later. Now, if I'm working with someone who's got a chronic health problem that looks like it might be allergy-based, I will consider whether it's worth them investing in getting a food allergy test, an IgG test, which is a blood test that will look at usually 96 common foods. Now, there are pros and cons in this. Now, firstly, there's a huge difference between a food intolerance and a food allergy. Only an allergy, which means your body makes an antibody to the substance, will show up in an IgG test. And of course, you'd have to have needed to eat in the food recently for it to show up. So of course, most people innately avoid a food that they think triggers them. And if they get a blood test without eating it, mightn't show. An intolerance though, which is a kind of like, I call it a bit like the game of Kaplunk, where you are you've got a casket of balls, you've got these sticks that you're pulling out, and then bingo, you pull out one stick and everything collapses, all the balls come out. Now, I kind of call that a very similar situation to a food intolerance. You can eat that food one day, you can pull that stick out one day and the balls don't drop. But another day, after you've done something else, maybe you're feeling a bit stressed, maybe you're a bit tired, maybe you've eaten chocolate not once but 3 times in that day, and kerplunk, you have become intolerant to that food and you will have those symptoms. Really, there is no laboratory testing that can comprehensively test for an intolerance. So you can get a food allergy test, comes back clear for most things, and you think you're fine, but you eat them and you don't feel good. You need to listen to your body. Some people ask me about skin prick tests, which is usually IgE, and while they can be quite good for contact allergies, they're notoriously incorrect for both false positives and false negatives for food. So that's the common sort of test that most doctors would offer a child who might have food allergies. And here we're not talking about anaphylactic reactions. It's pretty obvious. You probably, if a child has an anaphylactic reaction, you say to peanut butter, you probably just have to smear it on their skin and they will react. So I'm talking about adult intolerances and food allergies. One of the problems then when we're talking about having this blood test for the food allergies apart from not even eating the food recently, is they'll only test for so many foods. And the tests have largely been developed in the US, where they're looking at what common type of fish is eaten in the US, which is quite different to Australia. Even what type of beans we eat varies in those countries. And certainly in Australia, the general Australian diet in the major cities, we eat a much wider variety of fruits and vegetables and herbs and spices than the average American. So there are a lot of things that aren't tested, and the absence of a food coming up might just mean it's not tested. We then get on to what I call the machines that go ping, and more esoteric testing that can happen in the clinic. I personally, in my experience of 24 years in naturopathy, think there's a lot of hit and misses with those processes. They're not strongly independently tested in the market, and most of the success stories and statistics given are actually generated by the companies making or selling these products. So I've got a bit of a science problem with them. If it works for you and you're prepared to pay that kind of money, and this is usually a very expensive process, well, potentially there's no harm done. But generally when it comes to food, allergies and intolerances, a IgG test, a blood test, is not my first port of call, not my second port of call, but may come further down the line if we're close to it, but there's still something to be found. And in those cases, I've found some amazing results. I worked with an Asian guy who was allergic to white rice. That was a surprise to both of us. Also, there were some seasonal things. I had a client who was really well for many months on end and then would have these flare-ups. One food that she was allergic to was lemons. And what the difference was when her backyard lemon tree was fruiting, and then she would have lemons and everything. But the rest of the year it was just very occasional exposure. So Alan, complex question. It may just depend on the skills of your practitioners to find out what's going on for you, or you may have a food intolerance which isn't going to show up conclusively in any test. But if you suspect you have a reaction to a common food that you haven't been able to work out with your practitioner through a food and substance diary, maybe give that testing a go. But remember, it's going to cost a number of $100s, and you will not get a Medicare rebate on it, regardless of whether it's a naturopath or a GP who sends you for the test. If you've got a question for Health Q&A Monday, please send it to coaching@gillstannard.com.au. You can find me on Twitter and send me a tweet to herbalgill, or contact me through my website, gillstannard.com.au. Thanks for watching. Send me a question, I'll be back soon.